All right, so get this. You guys sent us a ton of material on building a resilient brand.
Oh, wow.
And we're going to really do a deep dive into all of it.
Okay.
We've got research reports, case studies, expert opinions, like all of it.
Yeah.
And I'm already seeing some really fascinating stuff here, especially with, all the economic uncertainty in the air these days.
Well, and what's interesting is it's not just about surviving a recession anymore.
Right.
It's about coming out stronger
Yeah,
on the other side.
exactly.
A lot of companies are looking for that edge.
Exactly. And that's what resilience is all about, right?
Yeah.
Not just weathering the storm, but using it to grow.
Yeah. Think of it
Yeah.
like a tree in a hurricane.
Oh,
Like a
right.
flimsy tree snaps, right?
Right.
But a strong one bends with the wind and comes out even more rooted.
I like that visual.
Yeah, and 2008, the financial crisis, and then the COVID-19 pandemic,
Oh, yeah.
those are perfect examples.
Right.
They force businesses to adapt or die,
Yeah.
and the ones with deep roots thrived.
So for a brand, okay, resilience means having systems in place that
Yeah.
not just to survive, but almost to benefit
Right.
from the disruption.
Absolutely.
Which is really powerful. And the research that you sent breaks down the key factors that influence resilience
Yeah.
into 5 main categories.
Okay.
Okay, so we have economic factors, dynamic market conditions, customer engagement and loyalty, technological disruptions and emotional connection, and core values.
Wow, it's a lot.
It is a lot.
Yeah.
We're going to unpack all of them, but let's start with those economic factors. I
Right.
mean, those are pretty front of mind for everyone right now.
Absolutely. I mean, everyone remembers how the housing market tanked and consumer confidence just like bottomed out in 2008.
Yeah.
It was rough. But brands that understood the psychology at play and adapted their messaging accordingly
Okay.
did a lot better than those who just panicked.
So it's not just about tightening the belt.
Right.
It's about communicating in a way that makes sense for how everyone's feeling. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. But economic downturns aren't the only thing that shake up markets.
No.
Think about how quickly the world changed when the pandemic hit.
Oh, my gosh.
Talk about dynamic market conditions.
It was a masterclass in adaptability.
Yeah.
The report actually says that brands that embrace challenges like that, use them as learning opportunities, often reinforce their core values and come out stronger.
So if you're listening, think back to the start of the pandemic.
Yeah.
How did your brand or business adapt?
Yeah.
What did you learn that made you stronger, and what blindsided you?
Because even with the best planning, some things you just can't anticipate.
Totally.
But that's where the human element comes in.
Okay.
Customer engagement and loyalty become absolutely vital
Okay.
during times of uncertainty.
The research you sent cites a study from Harvard Business Review
Okay.
that companies with strong brand resilience experience way less revenue volatility during crises.
It's like having shock absorbers in
Yeah.
your business.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So investing in those customer relationships pays off.
Absolutely. All comes down to building trust and emotional connections.
Uh-huh.
Those are the things that keep customers coming back, even when they're cutting back on spending.
They stick with the brands that they believe in.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So next up, let's talk about those tech disruptions. This is a big one, and it feels like the pace of change is only getting faster.
The report uses the example of e-commerce completely changing the retail landscape, and that was just the beginning.
Right.
Think about how artificial intelligence is transforming industries right now.
Oh, gosh. Okay, that's making my head spin a little bit, to be honest.
Yeah.
So how does a brand even begin to stay ahead of the curve with all of this happening?
Yeah.
Are there any, actionable tips from the research?
2 things stand out.
Okay.
First, invest in research and development, even if you're a small business.
Yeah.
You need to allocate resources to explore new ideas and technologies.
Okay.
And the second, stay agile, be open to new ideas, and willing to experiment. That might mean pivoting your business model or even scrapping a product that's no longer relevant.
You know what's interesting to me is that you're highlighting the importance of being willing to fail,
Yeah.
which can be a hard pill to swallow in the business world.
Well, failure is just data.
Okay.
It's information that tells you what doesn't work so you can get closer to what does.
I love that. Okay, speaking of big ideas, let's dive into this whole emotional connection and core values thing.
Yeah.
This is where it gets really interesting to me. How do those intangible things
Right.
contribute to a brand's ability to weather a storm?
It's about tapping into something deeper than just selling a product or service. It's about creating a sense of community shared values, a reason for people to believe in your brand.
The research actually states that a strong brand identity rooted in authentic values allows companies to navigate changing landscapes while maintaining a consistent message that resonates with their target audience.
Yeah.
Okay, but what does that even look like in practice?
Well, think about brands like Patagonia. People connect with them because they stand for something.
Yeah.
Their commitment to environmental sustainability is woven into every aspect of their brand,
Right.
from their products to their marketing to their activism. And it resonates with people who share those values.
So it's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Yeah.
Authenticity isn't just a buzzword, it's like a business strategy.
Uh-huh.
And the research backs that up.
Yeah.
It cites a study where 86% of consumers said they would boycott a brand they perceive as dishonest.
Wow.
That's huge.
Yeah. It's not just about avoiding a boycott.
Right.
It's about building a loyal following who will champion your brand because they believe in what you stand for.
So, okay, let me ask you this. If someone is listening right now and they're thinking, "Oh, this all sounds great, but how do I actually build a more resilient brand?" What are some tangible steps
Yeah.
they can take?
Well, the research outlines a few key strategies.
Yeah.
And it starts with embracing innovation. And that's not just about coming up with the next big thing. It's about fostering a culture of innovation within your organization.
So, encouraging employees to think creatively, to experiment, and to not be afraid to fail, like we were just talking about.
Yeah.
But how do you create that kind of culture? What does that look like on a day-to-day basis?
Right. It's about creating an environment where people feel safe to take risks, to share ideas, and to learn from their mistakes.
All right.
And that means celebrating both successes and failures.
Okay, so it's less about top-down mandates and more about empowering your team.
Exactly. If your employees feel like they have a voice and can contribute to solutions, they'll be far more invested in seeing the company succeed, even when the going gets tough.
And that brings us back to investing in team development,
Yeah.
making sure your employees have the skills and resources they need to navigate change effectively.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's not just about hard skills, though.
Right.
It's also about fostering resilience at an individual level.
Okay, now I'm intrigued. How do you build resilience in your employees? Is there like a resilience gym they can go to?
Huh. I wish it were that easy.
Mm.
But seriously, it's about creating a supportive environment where employees feel valued, respected, and empowered to take ownership of their work.
Okay.
It's also about promoting open communication and providing opportunities for professional development and growth.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, when people feel valued and supported, they're more likely to go the extra mile and kind of weather the storm together.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of celebrating small wins and recognizing the efforts of your team, especially during challenging times. It goes a long way in building morale and fostering a sense of shared purpose.
So it's not just about surviving tough times, it's about using them as an opportunity to grow and learn both individually and as a team.
Right.
You know, speaking of learning from others, the research mentions a few companies that thrived during recessions: Netflix, Amazon, and Lego. These are household names now,
Yeah.
but they all went through some pretty tough times.
They're great examples of how to apply these principles in the real world.
Okay.
Take Netflix, for instance. During the 2008 financial crisis, they recognized that people were looking for more affordable entertainment options.
Okay.
So they saw an opportunity in the rising popularity of streaming and made a bold move to shift their focus away from DVD rentals.
Yeah, I remember those red envelopes. It's hard to believe how quickly streaming took over. It makes you wonder, what's the next big disruption?
Exactly. But Netflix was ahead of the curve. They not only invested heavily in streaming technology,
Right.
but they also recognized the importance of content. They knew that to really win in this new landscape, they needed to offer something unique and compelling. So they started producing their own original shows and movies, which was a huge gamble at the time.
And it paid off big time.
Yeah.
I mean, they're a global entertainment giant now, all because they were willing to adapt and embrace innovation.
It's amazing.
What about Amazon? How do they navigate those choppy waters?
Amazon is a masterclass in diversification.
Yeah.
They already had a strong online retail business, but they didn't stop there. They saw the recession as an opportunity to expand into new markets and launch new products,
Yeah.
like the Kindle e-reader.
Oh, yeah, the Kindle. I remember thinking that was such a niche product at first.
Yeah.
But it totally changed the way people read.
And then there's Amazon Prime, which was another game changer.
Oh, yeah.
Free shipping and all those other perks. Brilliant.
It's like they anticipated what people would want before they even knew they wanted it.
Exactly. They understood the importance of customer loyalty, and they built a service that provided incredible value and convenience.
Yeah.
But they didn't stop there. They also saw the growing demand for cloud computing, and launched Amazon Web Services, AWS.
Which has become a massive revenue stream for them, right?
Huge. They took a multi-pronged approach.
Okay.
They diversified their offerings,
Yeah.
focused on customer loyalty, and were willing to invest in new technologies. They were nimble and weren't afraid to take risks.
Okay, last but not least, let's talk about Lego. This one's fascinating to me because they actually faced a near-death experience back in the early 2000s.
That's right. They had strayed from their core values and started chasing trends. They came out with all sorts of new product lines that were outside their traditional brick building system,
Right.
and they lost sight of what made them special.
It's like they tried to be everything to everyone and ended up diluting their brand.
Exactly. But they realized their mistake
Yeah.
and made a conscious decision to go back to basics.
Okay.
They refocused on their core product line, emphasizing creativity and imagination.
Okay.
They also did something really smart. They started tapping into that sense of nostalgia and community we talked about earlier by expanding their appeal to adults.
I've noticed that I see more and more Lego sets designed for adults these days.
It's been a huge success for them. They partnered with popular franchises like
Yeah.
Star Wars and Harry Potter,
Oh, yeah.
and even created a whole line of Lego sets specifically for adults. They realized their brand had a lot of untapped potential
Yeah.
and found creative ways to expand their market reach.
These are really inspiring stories, but let's be realistic for a minute. Building a resilient brand isn't easy. There are a lot of challenges along the way. The research you sent actually highlights several of them. Economic pressures, shifting consumer expectations, reputational risks, competitive pressures, and the ever-present need for adaptation.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. Let's break these down a bit, starting with economic pressures. When the economy takes a hit, it's tempting to cut costs across the board, but is that always the best approach?
The research cautions against sacrificing long-term brand building for short-term savings.
Okay.
While it's important to be fiscally responsible, you don't want to cut corners in areas that are crucial to your brand's long-term health.
So things like research and development marketing and customer service should still be priorities even when times are tough.
Right? It's about playing the long game.
Exactly. And what about those ever-shifting consumer expectations? How do you stay ahead of the curve when people's needs and preferences are constantly evolving?
Right.
I mean, it's hard enough to keep up with TikTok trends, let alone anticipate what customers are going to want next year.
It's all about listening to your customers, paying attention to market trends, and being willing to adapt.
Yeah. Okay.
The research points out that during tough times, consumers tend to be more value conscious.
Right.
So it's important to emphasize affordability and quality in your messaging and offerings.
That makes sense. People are going to be more careful with their money when the economy is uncertain.
Right. And they're also going to be looking for brands they can trust and rely on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more important than ever to be transparent, authentic, and responsive to customer concerns.
Okay, next up, reputational risks. Those can be pretty damaging, especially in today's hyper-connected world where news travels fast.
Absolutely. One misstep can quickly go viral and tarnish your brand's image. That's why it's so important to have a solid crisis communication plan in place
Okay.
and to be proactive in managing your reputation.
So it's not just about reacting to negative press, it's about building a strong reputation from the ground up. Exactly.
It's about being transparent, honest, and accountable. It's also about building strong relationships with your customers and stakeholders so that they're more likely to give you the benefit of the doubt if something does go wrong.
And what about competitive pressures? How do you stand out in a crowded marketplace, especially when everyone is fighting for survival?
This goes back to differentiation and innovation. What makes your brand unique? What value do you offer that no one else can? It's also about being agile and adaptable so you can quickly respond to changes in the market.
So it's about constantly evolving and finding new ways to stay ahead of the competition. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. Any final thoughts on these challenges to brand resilience?
I think the key takeaway is that you need to be proactive and prepared.
Okay.
Don't wait for a crisis to hit before you start thinking about resilience. Build it into your brand strategy from the ground up. Remember, the only constant is change.
That's a great point. The more you can anticipate and adapt to change, the more resilient your brand will be.
All right, well, I think this has been a really insightful deep dive into building a resilient brand. We've talked about the factors that influence resilience, looked at some inspiring case studies, and discussed the challenges that brands face.
It's been a great discussion.
Yeah.
I think the key thing to remember is that brand resilience is a journey, not a destination.
Right.
It's something that you need to constantly work at and evolve.
So true. It's not a one-time fix. It's an ongoing process of learning, adapting, and growing, and you don't have to go it alone. There are resources, experts, and even other brands out there who've been through this before connect, learn, and grow together.
Exactly. And you never know where inspiration will come from. Sometimes the most unexpected sources can spark an idea that leads to a breakthrough.
Speaking of inspiration, we talked a lot about what companies can do to build resilience, but what about the things they should avoid?
Okay.
Are there any common pitfalls that can undermine brand resilience?
Oh, absolutely. One of the biggest pitfalls is complacency.
It's easy to get comfortable when things are going well and lose sight of the need to constantly adapt and evolve, which is why, even if your brand is killing it right now, this is the time to pay attention.
So resting on your laurels is a recipe for disaster, especially in today's fast-paced world.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Another pitfall is being too slow to react to change.
Okay.
In today's digital age, news travels at lightning speed. And if you're not quick to respond to a crisis or a shift in consumer behavior,
Yeah.
you can quickly fall behind. You have to be able to pivot on a dime.
Makes sense. It's not enough to be resilient. You also got to be agile.
Right.
What about being too focused on short-term gains
Yeah.
at the expense of long-term sustainability?
Oh, definitely.
Is that a pitfall?
It can be tempting to cut corners or compromise your values to boost profits in the short term,
Right.
but that can ultimately damage your brand's reputation and undermine its resilience.
So it's important to have that long-term vision
Yeah.
and make decisions that are aligned with your values even when it's tough.
Exactly. And one last pitfall to avoid is failing to invest in your people. Your employees are your most valuable asset.
Yeah.
And if you don't support their development and well-being, they're less likely to be engaged and resilient, which can ultimately hurt your brand.
It all comes back to people, doesn't it?
It really does.
Building a resilient brand is ultimately about building a resilient team.
Yeah.
And that takes time, effort, and a genuine commitment to fostering a culture of support, innovation, and growth, which honestly feels like a great place to wrap up this deep dive.
Yeah.
We've covered so much ground, from defining resilience to analyzing real-world examples to dissecting the challenges and potential pitfalls.
It's been a fascinating conversation.
Ah.
I think the most important takeaway is that brand resilience is an ongoing journey. It's not a one-time fix. It's about constantly learning, adapting, and evolving.
And finding inspiration wherever you can. Maybe it's in the story of a company like Netflix completely reinventing itself, or maybe it's in the quiet determination of your own team as they face a challenge head-on.
Resilience is about being able to bounce back stronger and smarter, using those inevitable challenges as fuel for future success.
So to everyone listening, remember, this building a resilient brand is about more than just surviving tough times. It's about thriving in the face of uncertainty, using those challenges to grow and evolve, and most importantly, it's about believing in your brand, your team, and your ability to adapt and overcome whatever comes your way. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into building a resilient brand. We hope you found it insightful and maybe even a little bit inspiring. Until next time, I